right, we're back with Josh Cliffords, founder of FreeWater. So, Josh, I know we left off with some pretty cool bits of information last time, but I do have more questions for you, so I do appreciate your time. So, I'm gonna start with this. A couple years ago when I heard about this and someone told me, this before you and I had a chance to meet, I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I'm like, this has gotta be a horse shit, man. I'm sorry, don't be offended, but I'm like, there's no way. So, one of the things that I want you to be able to answer for me is like, what moment made you realize that giving stuff away could actually be a better business than actually selling it? Because honestly, that was my big hang up. So tell me, what is it?
I spent years developing ways to make it possible. We didn't want like a company like Coke or Pepsi to not copy in the future or not consider this model. So it took a while, but the goal initially was to think of ways where you can make $1,000 off of a single bottle of water. And then after weeks of whiteboarding it, we had already solved many. And so there's dozens of ways that you could do it. And so, yeah, so I guess 2017 was when I realized it could be more profitable at scale than selling these things.
You know, as a capitalist, I'm always looking for the, like, come on, dude, that can't work, right? Because nothing can be reinvented under the sun. But one of the things that, you know, as a business owner myself is like, I'm gonna ask you, like, how do advertisers actually make money when they give something away for free? How is that possible through your model?
Advertisements work, and if it's a good ad, it's a good ad regardless of the medium. Billboards work. This is like a mini billboard in your hand. Facebook and Google works. This is just like Facebook and Google because you could connect anything on the internet. I mean, Facebook's free, TikTok's free, porn's free, YouTube's free, and it's a good delivery method to get your ad out there. But what makes this special is this ad medium makes you happy. When you get something free that's useful, you get excited, and maybe even more excited because it's donating to charity, it's not in a plastic bottle, and from that excitement is when you should look at the can and be like, Netflix versus I'm browsing the internet and then boom, pop-up ad, or I'm watching a video on YouTube, I interrupt you, or I'm watching the basketball game and they interrupt you a million times. And so it's one of the few advertising mediums that makes people happy.
You know, coming from a generation that laughed at the idea of ever paying for water because we drink it out of the hose, I love to see that, you know, the concept of making sure water is free for everyone. But even though that's easier to swallow, excuse the pun, what is like one free or negatively priced product idea that people always laugh at? Because I'm sure there's a lot here. So, but I know that you secretly think it can work. So give me one that people mock out and make fun of.
Whenever we do like the man on the street interviews for social media, which we are kind of famous for, I always ask people, do you think water should be free? And without hesitation, 99% of them are just like, yeah, it should be free. But then when I ask them, what about food? Then they sit there, they think about it, and 9 out of 10 will say, I don't think food should be free. And then I'll say, why? And they'll be like, I don't want the farmers to work for free. Because they can't mentally conceptualize the fact that this whole supply chain, the bottles, the spraying, the whole 9 yards, it all got covered by ads. So then they think, well, the food can't work the same way. But when I explain to them that the farmer and everyone else would get the same money they normally get, then everybody's on board. And so I think that free water, it really just runs deep and everyone believes, okay, that's an essential, you can't. But when you hear food, then they kind of get scared until they realize, wait a minute, it could work for that too.
Okay. I think definitely that is definitely something still that, you know, people are gonna like need some time to get on board with, but I'm a believer. So let me ask you a question. You know, you talk about the water wells and, you know, getting access to other countries and why, you know, what the mission is behind FreeWater. So let's talk about other countries then, you know. Why do you think that this model is so impactful in countries like India, Nigeria, or Pakistan?
There's less red tape in those countries, and so you could scale your project much faster, and those people appreciate clean drinking water more because in America we could just drink straight out of the tap. And those countries, even if in some of the cities in those countries, even the wealthy people are still drinking bottled water, they can't drink their tap water. And so when you get the free water in those countries, it's that much more impactful. The startups that I found that are distributing free water in other countries like India, Pakistan, they get way more scans, they get way more engagement, and when they use an aluminum bottle or glass bottle, those people never throw it away. They recycle it over and over and over and over again. So I think that they just appreciate it a lot more.
I love that. You know, I think we all have that friend or family member that sees some great piece of technology and is doing well or whatever. Like, oh man, I thought of that back when I was in college. I already did all that. So I gotta ask you, because there's plenty of people claim maybe it's theirs, whatever. So tell me, how did you come up with the idea of printing ads on water bottles to fund clean water donations? I mean, what's that magic moment?
The first products or services I was working on was free taxi and free electricity. And I was in Times Square, New York City, making a commercial for free taxi, and the camera guy was thirsty. He's like, hey, please get me some water. And so I went into the 7-Eleven or the local convenience store to buy some water. And that was the first time I'd ever seen the brand Boxed Water is better. It's in a carton, it's just black and white. And I was looking at the box and I was like, what an ugly logo. Sorry, Boxed Water, but it is an ugly logo. And I was thinking, like, they could print anything on that packaging. Why would they print that? And then I turned it, and then on side 2, it just said hello. And 98% of the real estate wasn't used. And I was like, what the heck? Like, why would they just put hello there? And then on the third side, it was the big ugly logo again. And on the fourth side, it said, we donate up to 1% to charity. And I was thinking, this 1%, like, this is crap. And I looked at the price tag, they were like $5 a box. And I was sitting there staring at it, and I was still like, that's the worst artwork I've ever seen. Like, and I remember back in the day, we had the missing people on the milk cartons. So then I was thinking, like, since 1950, we had the ability to print photo quality images on the packaging. Why would they do that? And then I felt my phone in my pocket, and I was like, wow, and every phone's got a built-in QR code reader, so you could bring anything to life. And so after wrapping up filming for Free Taxi, I went home to LA to speak to my late mother, and I told her about FreeWater, and she just said, look, Josh, if you work on free taxi or free electricity, you're gonna fail. And I was like, Mom, what the fuck? Like, you're supposed to support me. And she was like, you're not famous, and you're saying negatively priced. No one's even heard of this. You know, you're not famous, you're no Elon Musk. Like, why would anybody support you in this? But she was like, you're just some regular middle-class dude. And a middle-class person could make a beer company, a water company, a bakery, a t-shirt company, a Frisbee company. She was like, prove that you could do negatively priced and profitable with something simple like a bottle of water, and then maybe people will listen to you for your other ideas next. And that's how it started.
Moms know best. All right, so if you can help me with my next Super Bowl party for free pizza, free beer, and free chicken wings, you got another investment from me. So, another conversation point that we had the other day, and I want to ask you about that. Can you explain what honest data is and why it matters for the future of business?
Everyone's heard of big data, and it's a scary word, and I hate the collection of data. But why honest data is important is because it reflects what people actually want and need, and it's going to be the only way to cut down on waste. Let me explain. When I go to the supermarket right now, I'm typically buying oranges and bananas. And so when I scan those bananas, boop, that big data is collected and it says Josh Clifford loves bananas. But I fucking hate bananas. My favorite fruit's actually mango and then blueberries. And so in a future world where everything is free, I'm just gonna grab mangoes and blueberries all the time. And now when you think about that sort of data point, it's really revealing, like, Josh Clifford actually hates bananas, he loves mangoes. And then you get the whole world to participate. Manufacturers are going to be able to use that data to produce the right amount of food. Instead of what happens today, which is they take a guess, they're like, I'm going to make tens of millions of a certain product and I'm going to dump tens of millions into marketing, and that food's going to sit in a warehouse. And maybe they sell it, maybe they don't. And it's a really wasteful practice. Actually, a third of all food just sits in the warehouse and then goes straight into the dumpster. And so honest data is going to allow people to manufacture the right amount of food for the right amount of people.
Well, we're friends. I don't like bananas either, so we may not get any sponsorship from Chiquita, but that's a whole other story. But, there's a lot of, the book only has so much room to tell stories of success and failure, but tell me something. what is a story from the early days of FreeWater that, may not make a poster or a t-shirt, but a moment that almost made you quit?
I created the idea in my wife's country, in Belgrade, Serbia. And I tried to launch the project in Europe. And it's that much harder to do business in Europe than the USA. It's just not as ingrained in their culture to like go in a garage, work for free, and out comes an Apple computer. So I went to Silicon Valley, and I'd been out of America for like 4 or 5 years. And I saw all these tech bros that were living in the house that I was renting a room in, and all of a sudden all the food was being delivered to their house. Before, when I left, like I went to the grocery store and bought food, but now all of a sudden everyone was ordering everything to their house while they worked. And I was thinking like, holy crap, this is really going to change the idea, because what I had invented for Europe was, since everyone's a pedestrian, you're going to walk by the free store, walk by the kiosk, walk by the free vending machine and get a free candy bar, free water, free whatever. And so I told myself I have to figure out a way to make delivering free or negatively priced products more affordable than the for sale counterparts. It took me weeks of just staring at a whiteboard. I locked myself in the room, and I almost quit 1,000,000 times. And then I was able to conceptualize consecutive delivery for the first time, which means when a product's free, you could deliver and drop it off house after house after house after house consecutively. With the right ad and the right person every time. And it drove me insane.
I think that's the kind of stuff that people can relate to, especially when they see the success of what you've done. Being able to take an idea from inception to execution and then spreading it out. I think that's a relevant point that I know that I love about this. You mentioned big companies like Coke, Pepsi, McDonald's, and how this book can help people start up their own. But I think what is daunting is when you talk about these big companies, like how does this book, how does it create a model that will actually help small brands and local businesses to be able to compete with the giants like Amazon or Coca-Cola?
The Cokes and Pepsis and Nestle's and Amazons are going to be the last movers, not the first movers. Even if they bought the book the same day as that, small startup in India or wherever, Germany, like the big companies are going to be the last movers, because if they just switched today and Coca-Cola became free, like their stock could plummet. They had the same business model for more than 100 years. Market doesn't like uncertainty. And so they're going to be the last mover, even if they got the book the very first day. And at scale, they built the wrong infrastructure for a world where things cost money. And so in order to really compete in this new world, they're going to have to build all new factories, all new infrastructure, new models of distribution and more. And the small startup doesn't have to do that. They could just build the right type of factory for this new industry from day one, the right type of distribution mechanism, the right free vending machine, and they could leap and bound in front of these companies really quickly.
I've had a chance to, got a sneak peek of the book before anybody else did. And, one of the things that I think a lot of people are going to experience, like I know I did, I went from bullshit to like, oh shit, when I read some of the stuff. But in your book, you talk about vending machines, delivery, and even printing trucks in the book. So which one of these things excites you the most and why?
The only way to ensure that we put this bottle in your hand and the ad is just for you, exactly what you want, is you're either going to have to grab it from a free vending machine or we're going to have to deliver it to your house. Both excite me, but the home delivery is what excites me the most, because I've always seen this as a free or better than free, negatively priced Amazon at scale, right? And Amazon started with their first product, which was books, and once they had the system and the network and the logistics laid out to get books to your house, then they added one product at a time. So once we get the free water to everyone's house, or you guys read the book and you get the free water to everyone's house, then you could easily add soda, tampons, frozen pizza, whatever you want, one product at a time. And so just getting that one ad medium there first. And I like to think of water as the universal ad medium, because everyone drinks water. Soda, not everyone drinks soda. Energy drinks, not everyone drinks energy drinks. Juice, I like apple juice, maybe they like orange juice, but water is that universal ad medium that gets your foot in the door. And so once you're sending them the water that donates to charity, then you could add one product at a time, and before you know it, it just becomes a free or negatively priced grocery store.
You know, I'll be honest, I'm still paying on a student loan on a degree I don't even use. And I'm watching the news about, cost of education. If I had to do it over, I think I would do something, right out of high school. College isn't ever for everybody. And I know you've talked about this before in our conversations. So let's talk about that. If a high school student may not have the means to go to college, or they have no desire, what would you say to a high school student if they wanted to start a free product company? What's the simplest version they could launch tomorrow?
It still costs a little bit of money because it's a physical product, right? If you're in a country like India, you could get it off the ground for much cheaper. It really depends where you are. In the book, there's a whole chapter of how to do it without packaging and co-packing. Because in certain countries like Turkey, I just recently learned it's against the law to outsource and co-pack, which means you have to own your own factory. That's like a huge amount of money to get in here. And so there's different ways to get involved in the industry by giving away free or negatively priced goods with no packaging. For example, you might want to go with like a vending machine sized just water purification system. So it's a big vending machine, it's full of water purifiers, it's connected to the city water, and you've got ads on the machines, maybe ads in the mobile app. People get the free water, and every time they fill up their reusable bottle, let's say it donates 10 cents to charity. It would have a digital screen on the front. Like that would be a much easier model to scale. So I would probably go without the packaging, and I would probably go that route. And it would be cheaper, but once you got it rolling, the digital ads would easily cover it, just like any digital billboard. And then before you know it, you'd go from 1 machine to 10, from 10 to 100, 100 to 1,000.
So you're basically saying it's so easy, even a high school student could do it.
I think armed with the right information, it's so easy, the right high school student could do it. Because you just have to, a lot of people start businesses, not everybody's successful. You can't guarantee their success. But what I could tell you is, if we distribute 10,000 of these books and one unicorn company comes out of it and just becomes like this $1 billion free tampons, free beer, free pizza company, the whole world changes forever. And so that's the plan. Distribute as many copies as we can and help as many people scale it as fast as they can. It's not going to work for everybody, but I promise, even if you don't want to make a free product company, even if you just want to sell products, this book is going to open your mind to so many other possibilities that you're going to create that for sale candy bar company in a radically different way, which would help them make more money too.
I've seen your man on the street interviews, and I've seen people grab the water and stuff like this. And okay, let's be honest. I am that guy that when I get that receipt and the clerk or the person at the desk says, "Oh yeah, if you like the service, please make sure you take time to fill out the survey or scan this QR code." And I'm like, sure. But I'll be honest, I'm like, I don't do it. So that kind of takes me to the next logical question, where I'm sure a lot of people want to know, especially advertisers, like, how do you make sure people just don't take your free stuff and walk away without ever scanning the ads?
I mean, I don't force people to scan the ads, right? That's not our business model. I've seen other people do it in other countries where in order to take the free water, they actually baked it in where you have to scan the ad. But look, I've got a Netflix ad in my hand. There's no QR code for Netflix. I've got a QR code for FreeWater, but Netflix thought that the QR code would cheapen their branding, right? So the most important layer isn't the QR code, it's the physical. Right, I would say the QR code is the second most important layer, and the third most important layer would be if you baked in augmented reality, so you could advertise beyond it. But not all ads require it. I told Netflix, like, I really think that you should put a QR code in their ad, and their head of marketing was just like, no, it's going to cheapen it. And I said, okay, go for it.
Netflix, obviously iconic. Everybody knows it. Everybody has a service, sharing codes, access when people don't live in the house. We know that, right? So that takes me to another question here. Being that Netflix is on there, do you think every business in the future? Or do you think that it's going to be built around giving away something for free? I mean, why or why not?
I mean, they already are. If they're advertising with Facebook or Google, they're paying for people to use Facebook or Google or TikTok or YouTube for free. It already happens. We're just doing that in the physical world.
You know, we talk about some of these moments that you've had, you know, moments that you get aha moments, you know, things fall in place. And the whole book is sharing things, successes and failures you learned along the way to help other people to mitigate their timeline to success. We all have perfect 20/20 vision when it comes to hindsight, all right? So if you could go back in time to when you first started, what would you do differently?
I would have likely launched this as a nonprofit than a for-profit startup. Now, I chose the for-profit route because I had launched 2 nonprofits in the past, and while we did a lot of great deeds, I just felt that the for-profit one would have worked more smoothly. And it did, but I think that the nonprofit model would have worked better for me and my skill sets, because I started with 0 skills across the board in all these industries that we're involved in now. Versus if someone was like an advertising executive, or they own their own bottled water or candy bar factory, or they were that super AI coder, or just had skill sets that I didn't have, they would probably want to go in the for-profit, and they would even scale it much faster, especially with this playbook. But yeah, if I could go back in time, I would have probably gone the nonprofit route, and now we're in the process of likely evolving into a nonprofit route, because in the early days I wanted to give a lot more money to charity, and with the for-profit route we settled at 10 cents. And so in the future we're going to likely evolve into 100% of all profit goes to charity.
That's awesome.